Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I am en route to my local 10-mile time trial, or my local cycling club's 10-mile time trial. I just dropped Charlie off about 5 miles from the start of it, and she's gonna ride there. I'm gonna meet her there, get my warm-up in, get bits and pieces sorted, and what was that? And hopefully have a good effort in the legs ready for Mallorca. And we have arrived in the traditional club time trial starting location, which is of course Laverack. So if you're not from the UK, this is generally what happens. You rock up on a midweek evening, you sign on, name, telephone number, contact details, all the rest of it, pay £5, at least that's how much it is here, and then you smash yourself for 10 miles. And tonight is a brand new course, so the course record is up for grabs because it's the very first one, and essentially we can't use the old course because it now starts in a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit zone. Yeah, we can go down a whole rabbit hole about that, which I might talk about in the commentary, which is coming up next, of some of the power overlay, if I can get my computer to edit the power overlay over it, because it takes a long time. So I'm taking on 50 grams of carbs now. We're about 30 minutes out. I'm going to do a nice little warm-up. Usually I ride to these things, but because Charlie wanted to get a ride in, also before Mallorca, I thought we'd come down in a van. So we're in the team van, and I'm probably going to get out for about 15-20 minutes. I rode for 2.5 hours this morning with Anthony, but it was really leisurely, chat and ride. So this warm-up's going to be like 5-10 minutes on 2, and then maybe 1 to 2 minute effort at like a roundabout threshold. And that'll be essentially it. So nothing too major. Generally I'd go for a longer warm-up, but I haven't got the time today, so that's what we're dealing with. I've got some new wheels. Well, they're not new, but they're 60 rear and 45 front from Black Ink. Don't know if you could see that, but that's the finish line just over there, where that 50-mile-an-hour zone is. I won't be doing 50-mile-an-hour through there, but maybe I hope I can do 50 kilometers per hour through there. It's funny, I've been doing these club time trials literally here for like 15 years, and I'm still like oh. Okay, let's get into some of this time trial footage that I'm gonna zap through. Sadly, I haven't been able to get the power overlay and heart rate and speed and everything else, but I'll talk you through that. I'll put some power data and some screen grabs from Strava up on the screen so you get an idea as we go through it. But check out my 2000 watts off the start line. That obviously didn't happen, but but actually I did show up to this event to fully send it. Essentially, you know, to give you a bit of backstory, with Sa Calobra coming up and with the idea of obviously trying to go faster than my personal best up there, I'm having to, just like anybody else, I'm having to push myself, you know, further than maybe I think is possible. And what I mean by that is essentially producing more power numbers, and you know, being as light as I possibly can be while still pushing those high power numbers, right? So it's a fairly simple way of looking at it, but I'm somewhat confident that I can go to Sa Calobra and go faster than I have last time, weather permitting. And tonight at this time trial, I think it was a good indication that I can be confident that I have good form, good fitness, certainly coming into this, and that I should really
not have any doubts, but know that if I've put this out on the road on a you know, an 8°C Thursday evening down in South Wales, then hopefully on a nice quiet morning in Mallorca, then I can, you know, replicate this on Sa Calobra. You know, last couple of weeks have been really, well, I say last couple of weeks, but actually the last couple of last 2 months actually maybe have been, you know, very consistent. Ever since the end of February, then I'd say things have become a lot more consistent, averaging around about 16 hours of training per week, and you know, around about 451 kilometers per week. But to be honest, it's just been a real focus on threshold training. All of my training has been somewhat below what we would refer to as FTP. You know, I've worked myself all the way up to a 4x15 minute session with very, very small rests, like 2 to 5 minute rests in between those, at just below FTP. And I've been working then on a basis that FTP is around sort of 350, 360 watts, and those 15-minute blocks were done at around about 330, 340 watts. So, you know, a lot of work there, like a lot of calories, a lot of power, and those sessions, they're no flukes, you know. And when you do a session that's similar and you know it's a hard session, you complete it. It's like, you know when you're coming good, because you know you can't fluke your way through certain sessions. All right, so I feel like the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, things have really progressed. And so tonight at this time trial was a good opportunity, along with all the Zwift racing and things I've been doing recently, because that's the only time where I've been going really above and beyond, and above and beyond FTP, and seeing if I can drag things up from above, is the term that we often use, rather than drag things outwards by riding longer at just below FTP. I've been riding above it during Zwift races and things like that. So it's not been anything concrete, and I can't wait until the time comes when I can start to do some double days, some VO2 max sessions, some all out effort. But for now, you know, this is where we've got to, off the back of the last 8 weeks potentially of building nicely, building that durability as well. So this time trial was actually a really good way for me to practice just that all-out effort, and not really knowing what I'd be capable of. Like, this time trial would be about 21.5 minutes, obviously on my road bike, as you saw earlier, but with some new additions to my equipment, being the mismatching wheel set. I was just sent that by Black Ink. I was just asking if they had any wheel sets that I could just borrow for a short period of time, and they sent those wheels as opposed to 2 matching wheels. Those were the ones they sent, so that's what I'm working with now. You know, I've had plenty of messages from people because I've never had a time trial bike apart from when I was racing for teams, and even then they were terrible time trial bikes. But this is going back 7 or 8 years. But I seem to go quite quickly on a road bike, and I don't know whether it's because I'm quite small, but of course it's a combination of many things. I'm quite small, and I'm able to ride at nearly 400 watts for 20 minutes, so that obviously helps. that does obviously help. But I wanted to go into a bit of detail about the pacing, and given this was a new course, and I think this type of course is a very common one in the UK, and especially maybe in the US, where they don't really have as many sporting courses, which, you know, in this country we would refer to as, like, you know, really hilly courses, like substantial climbs. They're really, like, few and far between anywhere, to be honest. But I know my audience is very much based in Australia, based in the UK, and very much based in the US. So speaking to you lot, you know, this course has the drags. Like, you go uphill for 700 meters at 4%, you go downhill, virtually the same thing you've come up. So these these drags are very shallow, and they're also very short. So in order to pace this, first of all, it was a headwind out, so I went really deep out to the turn, which the turnaround, because of the nature of this course, as you saw, it's about 5.5 kilometers out to the turn, and into that headwind I decided, right, this is where I'm going to do the majority of my power, which ended up being around 393 watts normalized. Now that's including some of these small little descents, but my first real recovery, if you like, is after the first turn, where you come downhill, you reach a max speed of around 60 kilometers an hour, and you're doing that for about half a minute, so it's enough time to, once you get up to that speed, unless you've got a large chain ring, which I know a lot of people are running nowadays, but I'm still running a 5211 on my road bike, so I just back it down. As soon as I reach terminal velocity, I just make myself smaller, and I just try and get a couple of deep breaths in over the next 30 seconds. That's the way I look at it. And then once I get back down to the second turn, I've just got to break it down into certain sections. I know if I'm going uphill, I want to be doing at least 390, 400 watts. If I'm going downhill, I can get away with roughly threshold, because over the course of a 20-minute effort, most people, and I'm generalizing, but most people would be able to manage an intensity factor of around about 107% of FTP. Okay, so 7% higher than FTP would be their rough average. Mine was actually 111%, but that's working off the basis my FTP is around about 350, which, arguably is slightly higher now, of course. But we come down to the turn, and it's almost a dead turn roundabout, which then leads into the first drag that we did, and this poses a challenge, because it's almost a dead, you're almost starting from not quite a dead stop, but you're doing like in the low 20s, 20 kilometers an hour. And this is where I produce some of my best short-term power numbers in this time trial, is after this dead turn, and I really try to drive in the power so that my Minuteman who's chasing me, he potentially doesn't have a chance to get within sniffing range. We're starting a minute apart. When I passed him going the other way, down the other side of the road, I could see we were roughly the same, but when we came back to this section, which I know would be slower now, because we were going into a headwind and we'd made this dead turn around the roundabout, I wanted to invest. I wanted to invest a lot. And plus, we're getting on for being around about 10 to 15 minutes into the time trial at this point. So if I'm going to bury myself before I get into this tailwind, this is probably the place I'm going to do it. So I make this turn, and I spend the next 3.5 minutes at around 400 watts. I bury myself up to the turn point, which is quite easy to do because the gradient is really pushing back on you, but this is where I get my first major respite, where we start going downhill, and I spend the next 30 seconds at 270 watts. So I know I'm doing 57 kilometers an hour for the next 30 seconds. I'm not going to pedal as hard as I would, obviously. What I would gain there versus what I would gain by pushing harder on that climb is negligible. And so pushing harder on the climb is going to be more beneficial. That climb is 1:10 long versus the descent is 30 seconds long. So investing more on that climb, and knowing how much to invest as well is really important. So not going too far above FTP, and then also not coming too far below. Sometimes you can blow a gasket by going too high, for too long. You talk about matches, and of course, the longer you do that high effort for, then the more matches you're going to burn, and then the more recovery it's going to take to come back down from it. So you need to be, although you're fluctuating power, you need to be really controlled about it, and you need to think about how is this going to affect the next 5 minutes of my time trial. So you're always trying to think ahead. And then coming from there to the finish, to be honest, I thought I was going to start to fade off, but actually I finished stronger, much stronger than I thought I would. And for the last 5 kilometers, I averaged 48 kilometers an hour. Bearing in mind some of it was downhill, but once I got onto the flat road at the bottom, I was nearly in my 5211, and I was just pushing 404 watts for the last 3 minutes and 45 seconds, averaging 48 kilometers an hour on that flat road. Bearing in mind, I had a tailwind, but at that point, you know, you're so close to the finish that you can usually find something if the momentum takes you. So that was my time trial. I was well chuffed with it. The numbers were banging. Like, you know, really couldn't have wished for a better performance. And I just hope now that I can repeat that in Mallorca to try and beat my personal best, and maybe even go under 24 minutes. You know, that would be a big ask, but a sub 24 minute Sa Calobra would be a real gem. I'm not going to put too much weight on it, but it would just be awesome to shave that much time off. But we'll see. You know, it all comes down to conditions and things on the day, and I've done it once before. I could do it again. And this final blast, this final time trial, along with an Alpe de Zwift PB attempt later this week, will put the cherry on top of the cake before we head out there. So I hope you've enjoyed this commentary, guys, and if you're new here, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below if you've got a time trial that's very similar in terms of you know, the terrain, or you know, maybe you prefer the hilly time trials, or prefer the ones where you're able to see other people on the course and gauge how you're going, or you know, you like pan flat time trials because they're easier to pace. Let me know down below, and I will catch you in the next video. Can you get my nose?
Your nose? And your drool?
Is there any... Oh no, look, it's all over my skin as well.
Ugh.
It's that sticky, like, you know, when you gob, it's like...
Thanks for that.